Doctor Who showrunner Russell T. Davies did an interview in the lead up to the release of the first two episodes of Doctor Who, which have turned out to be some of the worst viewed episodes. I think they are the worst viewed episodes in the entire show's history. But he said in this interview that it is his job to let trans and queer stories through. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com this morning. You should have it bookmarked for all of your pop culture needs. But Davies did an interview with Deadline ahead of the first two episodes premiering on Disney Plus and then on the BBC. He first informed the outlet about how he was part of the first wave of injecting this degenerate propaganda into television, specifically promoting the sin of sodomy and trying to paint it as a lifestyle rather than what it is, the sin that it is. So he said this: I know I was part of a rising tide of gay, lesbian, and other writers, all of us contributing to the soaps and chipping into primetime dramas. All of us slowly and then rapidly increasing the visibility of queer characters on screen. And I'm lucky that I was one that burst through and got that on screen. He continues saying, I'm always aware, especially as time marches on, that I carry this legacy of being white, male, and gay. As you can see there, that's part of his identity now rather than the sinful act that he commits. At least that's how he's trying to paint it. He's trying to paint it as part of an identity. It is not. Goes on and says, and it's my job to look beyond that because there's no point in sitting still. I have to look at myself and be certain that I've moved on. I looked at society and tried to listen to what's going on and open gateways. He then declared this: when you become a senior figure in television, it's your job to open doors and let the next people through, and to let trans and queer stories through, and to become familiar with this language myself instead of settling into middle age. So absolutely sick and disgusting, but again, not surprising. He obviously admitted to pushing the sin of sodomy, trying to normalize that early on in his career, and now he is trying to push transgender ideology and even more sodomy stories now that he is in middle age. He goes on and says this, though. One of the marvelous things about being gay is that actually you're always in the news, whether you want to be or not. It's in every presidential election or prime ministerial election in Great Britain. Someone will ask about gay rights. Someone will ask about queer rights. You find yourself in this remarkable position of always being topical and newsworthy. And although I wish a lot of those problems and discussions didn't happen, I agree, but probably not for the same reason that he wants them, that they'd be fixed and settled. But nonetheless, you find yourself always being in the news. Yes, we should go back to sodomy being illegal like it used to be. He then added, and I think that keeps you topical and alert. It means you can't quite settle into middle age because your rights are not enshrined and are paper thin. I've always said that our rights are paper thin, and lo and behold, the past 5 years have proved me right. So there's plenty of acts that are illegal, yet you still maintain rights. You can't murder people. You can't steal from people. Those things are illegal because they are wrong. And this idea that committing sodomy has somehow been enshrined as an identity, and that somehow means that you get extra rights, that this action is now protected by the legal system. I 100% disagree with it. It is indeed wrong and evil. And I think we see the fruits of the rotten fruits of enshrining this disgusting action around us. Look at just how society has declined in just the few years since you really saw this push on not only legalizing it, but normalizing it and turning it into an identity. So Davies then concluded, so when it comes to this whole world, this whole vortex of this whole continuum, my own work that I've created, then Doctor Who is simply just a natural part of that. And I have to believe that I've been employed to write, to be me, to simply write the way I write, and to say things that I say. His comments are not out of the ordinary. In an interview with Variety, he made it clear he was using Doctor Who to propagandize sodomy and acts of grave depravity to children as young as 6 years old. That's what happens when you legalize this stuff and normalize it. This is what I'm talking about. We see this now in front of us. They're literally trying to use this stuff to target children. Target children. Variety's Elise Schaefer wrote this. There's the criticism that Doctor Who is a show that appeals to children and that a queer actor playing the Doctor will reach more kids than ever with its new home on Disney Plus, which is a disturbing idea to homophobes. I'm not afraid of these people. I just think what they're doing is evil. It's very different. They always try to accuse you of these things that they're actually afraid. They're the ones who are afraid because they know what they're doing is wrong and evil. Davies sees the show's wider reach as an opportunity to open people's minds. She then quotes Davies, who says this. I think if you're 6 years old, you don't care, not at all. But nonetheless, as the world darkens, and I do think the world is darkening around queer rights, there is a joy and a celebration, and there's a community. Whether you're 12 years old, just beginning to work out who you are, 62 years old, and you've never been who you are, or 61 years old, like I am, and beginning to worry about where we are in society, there's a hero out there cutting his way through the universe, looking good in his suits and doing it with a laugh and a smile. So this is exactly how they're trying to normalize this stuff. They make the hero perform these acts. They show that this hero is good, and they want you to emulate the hero, which is Shudigawa's doctor, even though what he is doing is wrong. And it's very clear that he's wrong. Let's just go over here. This is what the Catechism of the Catholic Church says. Basing itself on sacred scripture, which presents homosexual acts as acts of grave depravity, tradition has always declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. They are contrary to the natural law. They close the sexual act to the gift of life. They do not proceed from a genuine affective and sexual complementarity. Under no circumstances can they be approved. It's very clear here. And then as far as the transgender ideology, Archbishop Sample of the Archdiocese of Portland recalled a conversation he had with Pope Francis while speaking with Catholic Answers back in June 2022. He said this. He's talking about Pope Francis. Pope Francis said this. This is a direct assault on God himself. It's the ultimate rejection of God, that we don't need God. We don't need to accept God. We don't need to accept our individuality. We don't need to accept how God has made us. We just cast God aside, and I will redefine myself. This ideology that's in the culture today now, that there's no such thing as a binary gender. There's multiple genders that we can define. Nobody's one or the other. We're just in this gender fluidity, so that young people growing up are indoctrinated into this ideology. And this is what Pope Francis goes off after. It's a terrible thing what's happening. It is. It's absolutely terrible. It is evil. In fact, we see some of these fruits here, because Archbishop Sample explained this in his A Catholic Response to Gender Identity Theory, how this ideology is dangerous. He says, to some, supporting aspects of social transition may seem benign, even humane, such as using someone's preferred pronouns and actively affirming his or her perceived gender. However, while well-intentioned, this kind of endorsement may help shepherd a young person on a path of unnecessary medicalization. Social transition is often the first step towards hormones and surgery. A 2020 survey of transgender and non-binary youth found that 64% of respondents were either already receiving cross-sex hormones or desired to do so. Danish researchers who first used puberty blockers on gender dysphoric children found that social transition increased the likelihood that dysphoria would persist and result in medicalization. Social transition can also include practices such as breast binding and genital tucking, both of which have been shown to have adverse effects on physical health, like testicular torsion and reduced fertility in males, and abnormal lung function and back pain in females. Moreover, a 2020 study on the effects of social transition found that family and peer relations, but not social transition status, predicted psychological functioning. So clearly, really a ton of physical problems, a ton of emotional problems, a ton of spiritual problems result from embracing this ideology, this transgender ideology. So let's get back over here to what Davies had to say. Let's jump down here. He talks about mental health and how he wants to really use Doctor Who to touch on mental health, except he's the one who's degenerating their mental health by promoting this stuff, trying to normalize this stuff. This stuff literally um, breaks people mentally, breaks people emotionally, and breaks people physically. Nevertheless, he says, the one thing I keep seeing now is the fragility of the mental health of young people. It's like there's a nervousness about in the air now. So that's the hero I wanted for them. If that younger audience is feeling so much, I wanted the Doctor to feel it on screen as well. So he goes on and talks about this with Deadline as well. But I do want to talk about how people are rejecting this stuff, and as they should. This is truly something good that people are rejecting this stuff. They've promoted this show clearly as a giant piece of propaganda. They want to normalize this stuff. They are targeting children with this stuff. Russell T Davies admitting that that is exactly what he is doing. They are actively trying to harm people with this show, and I think people have caught on. The first two episodes, which debuted on Disney Plus and then on BBC, had the worst overnight ratings ever for the BBC over in the United Kingdom. Doctor Who TV reported that Space Babies only brought in 2.6 million viewers, and The Devil's Cord only brought in 2.4 million. That's a huge decline from the debut episode that saw Ncuti Gatwa debut as the 15th Doctor in the Church on Ruby Road. That was a Christmas special. According to the BBC, that viewership hit 4.7 million in overnight numbers. So if we look at the decline there was a 45% decline in viewership for Space Babies, and then just shy of a 49% decline for The Devil's Cord. And as Doctor Who Guide reports, those two episodes are the worst viewed episodes in Doctor Who history. The previously worst viewed episodes in the United Kingdom were 1989's Battlefield Part 1, which brought in 3.1 million viewers, and then 2022's Legend of the Sea Devils, which brought in 3.47 million viewers. So this stuff is being rejected by viewers, but don't expect them to stop. This is part of the culture war that Bob Iger says, Disney CEO Bob Iger says they are not engaged in. Clearly, they definitely are. We're seeing this right here. Russell T Davies admitting that it is his job to push these stories. You can see the slippery slope. He went from pushing the sin of sodomy as normal and the sin as a lifestyle, as a protected class in many countries, to now he is pushing transgender ideology. You really can't make it up. This stuff is absolutely evil. We must reject this. And I'm glad that people are rejecting it. We need to get that number down. Hopefully it will go down. We're already seeing kind of a decline there, 2.6 to 2.4 million in back to back. But we can get this number even lower. This stuff is absolutely wrong. It must be opposed. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know what you make of Russell T Davies confirming that it is his job to push trans and queer stories and using Doctor Who to do so. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable to each other, but to always speak the truth.